back on these shows, I Love Lucy, Andy Griffith, you know, Gilligan's Island and the Munsters and Beverly Hillbillies and all those shows. When you look back on them now, and you also have to compare them to Friends and those shows from when you were coming up, like, do you have a preference?
Yeah, I do. And it's weird thinking that I have a preference because, you know, I never thought I would have a preference because of how much I love movies and shows just in general because they're an escape. But I do find myself loving the older shows just because they feel more at home. They feel more comfortable, even if they have these dark undertones and everything. For whatever reason, they just seem simpler. And they seem to have like these more catching storylines, and they don't have to try as hard.
Yeah.
What about you?
I mean, I now look back very fondly on Seinfeld and Friends and those shows, but I still got to go with the older shows. They are, to me, more rewatchable. I think Friends is really up there. I appreciate Friends now more since it's been off the air for 20 years than I did when it was on. And I was a little bit like, I am 10 years younger than like everybody in that cast. So when they were in their mid-20s, I was in high school. By the time I'm in my mid-20s, the show's over and they're all married and have kids. And it's very different because with shows like I Love Lucy and Andy Griffith and all that, there's no continuity. You can put on any episode. You don't have to know anything about the show, and there's no callbacks to something that happened 2 seasons ago. There's not even a callback to something that happened on the last episode. They are completely self-contained. And
it's something new. It's, you know, you're coming into the episode and you get to learn something new that's going on in Mayberry. You come into something new with I Love Lucy and they're, you know, juggling chocolate off of a conveyor belt. You know, that's one of my favorite episodes just because I would do that. I would struggle super hard. I think I would probably lay on the conveyor belt and just sit there and be like, I'm done. I'm done. I can't do it.
And I mean, even if you're going into something like Star Trek, which I didn't really grow up on, I've watched it as an adult, but you pick any random episode of Star Trek, you could watch it and you don't have to know anything about Star Trek. Now, every single episode not only ties in, like, it's one continuous storyline the whole season, but it also ties into 3 other shows that you have to watch. And it starts to get overwhelming. I mean, that's what I feel. I gave up on things like Star Wars and Marvel because at a certain point, I just got to the point where this is fucking homework.
Yeah,
and I don't want to do it anymore.
So I still love Marvel. That's because in some sense, Iron Man saved me. Not going to go into it. But after, like, the Infinity, like, War or whatever the last Avenger movie was, I'm like, okay, I'm done. Like, I didn't even go off and watch, like, Thor movies, the Captain America movies. I'm just like, nope. I'm going to watch the Iron Man movies and I'm going to watch the Avenger movies. That's it. I'm not going to do anything else because otherwise, like you said, it's homework. Yeah. Because, yes, the lore is great. You know, and if people want to do that, that's great. But when you have something, you don't want to complicate it too much because that's when you'll lose your fans.
And I think that is something that the fact that people are en masse, like, deleting Disney Plus subscriptions and Marvel movies are bombing and, you know, it goes to show that just having a simple, self-contained story, like the first Iron Man was, you just watch Iron Man. You don't have to know anything about anything else. And with those classic shows, you could just watch them. Doesn't matter what episode it is. Could be, maybe you have your preference on what episode you like, you don't like, but they're one and done.
Mm-hmm.
And not to say that I don't like serialized storytelling and stories that, you know, continue on over years sometimes, but
don't have a, you know, a tree
mm-hmm.
and have all these branches networking out.
Yeah, it gets to be too much, and there is just there's a warm, cozy simplicity
mm-hmm.
to the classic TV shows
mm-hmm.
that I really miss. And the great thing though is I can watch those shows and they're still funny to me,
mm-hmm.
and they're still fresh, and they're more so even than shows that would come later on, because I feel like they get too specific about world events. They get too specific. Andy Griffith, it's the South in the 60s, and there is no discussion of civil rights.
Mm-hmm.
And a show nowadays would, you couldn't do that. You'd have to touch on it. And at the time they were just like, we're trying to make you laugh, and that we're just not, you know, oh, the president was assassinated. We're not talking about it. You know, there's riots in the streets. We're not talking about it.
Well, one of my favorite characters in that show is Otis. He's the town drunk.
Mm-hmm.
He knows that there is no drinking allowed in the town, that they're a sober town.
Mm-hmm.
He will stumble into the, you know, jail drunk. He will lock himself into the jail
mm-hmm.
and put the keys back, and he's just like,
yep,
and fall asleep. And they do it purely just to make you laugh.
mm-hmm.
They know it's wrong, what he's doing.
Mm-hmm. And every now and then they touch on it.
Yeah. But they're doing it simply to just make you laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes the show good,
mm-hmm.
is that they can make fun of small, stupid things.
Mm-hmm.
They don't touch on these big, grand scale things because they don't want to make fun of that.
Yeah, and consequently, because they don't touch on those big grand scale things, the shows don't feel quite as dated
mm-hmm.
as other shows that came along later and had to talk about the Iraq War, or, you know, 9/11 or whatever.
That's why I have a hard time watching military shows.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I like watching MASH, and you know, it was during the Korean War. You know, that's what, you know, the show is based around. But you know, I think that's the only military show I can watch.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I can't watch these gung ho war shows. Just because of how much they, you know, press on all these military conflicts that we have, and I think it just adds on to all the political unrest that we already have.
Yeah.
It just adds on to the anger and everything else that's going on.
And sometimes all you want is a simple show that you can watch and it'll make you feel good.
Yeah.
And that's what we used to get.
Yeah. And I mean, if we want to be angry about something, let's just turn on the news.
Or not.
Or not.